Probably, I think looking around, y'all look like a crowd that's been here before, but I'll give a little quick introduction. Firestorm is a 17-year-old radical bookstore run by a queer feminist collective. It's our third location, and I'm pretty sure Rebecca has spoken at all three. Um, if you haven't been here before, I'll just point out a few things. You can find a bathroom on the other side of the space. There's a little hall. The light will come on when you step in. Behind you, there's a door out onto the deck that might not be the one you came in, but feel free to use that if you need to get some fresh air or step outside for any reason. And if you need anything while you're here, you can definitely tap me or one of my collective mates over by the register, and we'd be happy to help you out. That's also where you can find copies of the Complete Folk Herbal, which we're going to be talking about tonight. So I'd encourage you to grab a copy before you go home and maybe get Rebecca to sign it. Okay, so there's a sort of perfunctory sharing of biographies here, which I am now going to do. Rebecca Beyer founded the Blood and Spice Bush School of Old Craft. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Plant and Soil Science from the University of Vermont and a Master's in Appalachian Studies and Sustainability from Appalachian State University. She lives in the mountains of Western North Carolina, where she manages a homestead and teaches traditional witchcraft, foraging, and Appalachian folk medicine. I think this is the third book of yours that we suck forth. Is it the fourth? Oh my gosh, I'm dropping one. And also some zines. So definitely check out all of Rebecca's work. But I know tonight we're going to have a great time talking about this beautiful new volume. Thanks for being here.
Liberty, thanks so much. I feel like the first location of Firestorm, when I first moved here with my best friend, Sarah Lynch Thomason, who's in the crowd right now, she worked at Firestorm and we did our May Day choir there. And I think that was the first time I ever did anything public in a place. So I hold that dear to my heart. Y'all, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to see all y'all. Thank you for, I'm gonna cry. That's fine. I have 4 cancer placements. We have to do what we can. Tonight, my hope is to just kind of share a little bit with you about what this book is, how to use it, and give some examples of some of the herbs and just share some of the short chapters with you. Not to read them to you, but to kind of walk you through some lore, because I know that we're all only in it for the lore. I'm Rebecca Beyer, she, her. I professionally teach foraging, gardening, plant lore, and witchcraft, and I specialize in Appalachian regional kind of studies. And so while that is true, this book is actually not confined to Appalachia and has tropical plants and other commonly or uncommonly used herbs that I felt called to share about. So I think I will start off. You just tell me when I should share my screen, I guess. I might go ahead and do that. Thanks, friend. Let's see if I can figure it out. Never screen shared before. It's my first time. Okay. I'm so sorry. All right. How's that look? Pretty good, y'all? And please let me know. You can just call out if you notice something's going on with the computer. I was like, did I spell complete right? Let's start there. So one of the funniest things, I started writing this book 2.5 years ago. And Simon and Schuster, who are my publisher, I have a very interesting relationship with them because a lot of people ask me, like, how do you get a book deal with a big publisher? And my main thing I would say is just write. Make a blog, share, make zines, like just write and put your writing out into the world, because they actually found me through my blog that I've been keeping since 2014 on Blogspot called Blood and Spice Bush, which has gifted my business its name. I started writing about plant lore, and what I wanted to do, and kind of the basis of all of my work, is to take information about plants from where I live and ask, where does this plant come from? Why is it here? Why do we know about it? What peoples led to us knowing about that? And what can we do now with that information and put it into a working context, if that makes sense? And so when I wrote my first book, Wild Witchcraft, with Simon and Schuster, they said, we want a book about foraging and gardening and magic. And I said, that sounds super fun. I have no idea how to write a book, but I'll do my best. And it was really fun. I enjoyed it a lot. It's a lot of work. And then they said, we want to do another book, but we want it to be just like your herbal notes on herbs. And I was like, this sounds easier. It was not easier, as many of my friends who also write books know. There's a lot of back and forth. And unfortunately, during Helene last year, I lost my entire studio, all of my books, all of my writing materials, all of my I tattoo for a living mostly. I lost everything, and I was able to dig my statue of Venus out of the mud, made of metal and a few metal plates, and that was it. And then I had to edit this book within a week after that. So I have hilariously I think of this book as a testament to non-AI writing, because there are some hilarious mistakes in this book that I will be fixing in the second edition. But I honestly, I'm really trying not to beat myself up and say, wow, this is the beauty of non-AI writing. So if you find a hilarious mistake, please let me know and I'll try to get it fixed. So I basically took all my notes, which my notebook with all my herbal notes was destroyed in Helene, but a lot of them are in here. So this book is also a testament. Like, it helps me preserve my own bibliography from my almost 20 years of studying herbs. So I'm so grateful for the timing on that. Honestly, it's pretty divine if you think of it that way. My publishers wanted me to call this the Complete Folk Herbal, which at first I was like, no, that's not a good name, for obvious reasons. But they really, really wanted me to call it that, and they let me do whatever I want and write whatever I want, generally speaking. So I was like, okay, we'll call it the Complete Folk Herbal. And I thought about some of the older English herbals from the 1500s, specifically the Culpeper. It's complete herbal. So this is like a modern feminist take, we'll just say, on the Complete Folk Herbal from 1563, I believe. So what is an herbal? I wanted to create basically a living notebook that would be a starting place for somebody who wanted to study herbs. And herbals are not new. They're very old, and they were born in Africa, which is so cool. And we believe the first one was the Ebers Papyrus from 1550 BCE. Isn't that incredible? People have been writing about medicine since writing was born. And there are also cuneiform tablets that have Sumerian writing about herbs. But this was the first one that generally was written largely concerning the topic of plant medicine. And I think that's so incredible. And of course, we can't talk about that without talking about Chinese medicine as well. And the Shenong Benkao Jing in 2700 BCE is also another one of the oldest purely plant-focused pieces of writing. So I have to nod my hat to our OG plant writers, of course. A lot of what I wanted to do with this book, too, is to provide a reference book when you say, where does this herb originate from? And try to, as accurately as possible, record that information. So a lot of times, if you look up where is the first herbal, it'll start with Dioscorides, but that's not correct. It's the Ebers Papyrus. And that's 77 AD. So it's actually much later. Isn't that interesting? Because a lot of times, if you venture into my book, the first chapters are about the history of Western herbalism. And unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation about that. And we're always discovering more with technologies that are advancing. We're able to read, imprints of things that were once illegible, and so on and so forth. And this is often where the story begins. But like I said, it's actually much older, which is so interesting. And here's just a little bit of information. Dioscorides, I don't know how to speak Greek, y'all. Please correct me if I'm saying these names wrong. I think that's how most people say his name, but he's a Greek physician from modern day Turkey, and he recorded information from Europe and North Africa in his travels. And this is another thing, me and my amazing friend and colleague, Lucretia, I'm calling you out, I'm so sorry, who's sitting in the front row, have talked a lot about this, is as herbalists and as people interested in history, it is very sad to just see history written incorrectly. And we're used to this, I think, a lot of us, in who is writing history, why are they writing it? Oh my gosh, hi. And, the whitewashing of Western herbalism. So I am so interested in creating easy to access and read and understand information with sources that are cited. And that's where I really wanted to start with the history there. So I'm going to let you delve into the history on your own. And like we said, it starts in North Africa and then it, like a drop of water, spreads throughout the world with people writing and creating their own books and repositories of herbal knowledge. And with the folk word in this book, does anyone know how to define the word folk? Can anyone, what makes something folk? Basically means something you don't have to write down, something that's orally transmitted. Generally speaking, that does not have a canon or doctrine, but is a corpus or body of lore or knowledge that's passed down orally. And so it's kind of funny to have a book called Folks Anything because it goes against the definition of the word. For me, when I use this word, it means something I could tell my 7-year-old friend, and they would say, I understand that. That makes sense. Something that is simple and clear, not basic, right? So to me, that's another thing I really tried to do with this book is to make sure it's easy to understand and that you could easily explain it to someone else in a clear way without using jargon or like scientific words, which in my teaching, I also try to do because I feel like it's easier for me, even though I have a degree in plant science. I'm really bad at memorizing science words. And so it's nice when things are really easily understandable. So another thing I see a lot in modern herbal books is trying to put like where, how or why are we using this book? And to me, it has to start with the scope of practice. A lot of us, we learn a couple herbs and then we're like, I would like to cure cancer. That's valid. That's really awesome. I want to also do that. However, staying within a scope of practice with our herbs that is safe and realistic and is in accordance with what we know, it's really hard. It's something we have to check in with ourselves about constantly. And sometimes it's, a check in where we say, oh, I actually know quite a bit. I can extend myself to help a little more here. But often, I think more often it's, I'm going to ask someone else who knows more than me about this. I'm going to ask for help from my community members to get more information before I try to give someone an herb for a complex medical issue, right? And of course, Western medicine works, and we have to make sure to integrate those two things in a way that's realistic for all bodies that may be on medications. So I really tried in this book anywhere I could to put what medications should we not give these herbs with, or what class of medicines do these herbs are they not safe with. I would never use this book alone to check that. I would always use a drug interaction book as well. So you don't have to read all this stuff is essentially what I said. Basically, it's don't do anything too wild with herbs. And if you, as you wander the path of the intro to my book, you'll find yourself at the where do I get herbs from section. And there's a lot of different ways you can get herbs. You can buy them, you can grow them, you can take them out of the cracks of the sidewalk, you can harvest them from your backyard, you can harvest them from so many places. And there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of confusing information that's not wrong, but very confusing. I feel like in modern herbalism, where there's either a take whatever you want, the world is your oyster, or there's if you touched a plant, you are the literal worst. I can't believe you did that, you monster. And there's not a lot of in between. And it's really hard because we live in Appalachia, which is covered in kudzu and honeysuckle and dandelions and lots of invasive plants that you actually can quite help yourself to. And it does not make you a monster. So I think context of where you live is really important. And figuring out the complexities of being in a place is the first step to learning how to work with plants. There's no take 30% rule. That does not exist, in my opinion, in a healthful plant harvesting practice. There are plants you can sustainably harvest over and over and over again, and they will respond with growth and vibrancy and life. And to shame each other from touching plants to me is the greatest travesty because so many of us just want to come home to plants. And you see this online a lot. If somebody doesn't know something, we're going to really try not to shame them. And I hope in this book, I really try to talk about that and talk about how can we set ourselves up so that we aren't harming plants, but also to be realistic in taking stock of the actual populations of them. So we're not just saying, well, I can harvest these because I know better, but you can't because you're new. We have to stop doing that. So I really hope that this book helps with that as well. And like I said, I'm a huge fan of invasive plants. I have some other friends in here too who love invasive plants, and we don't love that they're invasive, but we love that they're here and that we can utilize them and we can work alongside them. They are sacred somewhere, you know. We may look at them and call them a weed, but I love honeysuckle so much. I mean, who doesn't have a sweet memory associated with this beautiful Japanese plant, right? Its Latin name, Lonicera japonica, whispers to us where it's from. And Japan is filled with long-standing animist traditions that honor the spirit in all things. So I always think of that when I see honeysuckle, even if I'm yanking it off of my stairs. It's currently climbing up the side of my tattoo shop. And it has become integrated into Cherokee basket making traditions in our region. So there's new traditions being made all the time, and you get to make those as well. You are part of that. We are all part of that. So invasive basically just means a plant that causes it stresses out our native plants versus naturalized plants, which can kind of grow alongside our native plants, and it doesn't seem to necessarily harm those around them. I always think of dandelions as naturalized plants. They don't really go up to anybody and climb up them and strangle them like some other friends of ours, like kudzu and like honeysuckle and like fairy potatoes, the wild yams. So one of my favorite wild edibles. But it's so interesting. When I defended my thesis in Appalachian Studies against a biology professor, he was like, I can't believe you would support people foraging. It's inherently destructive. And I was like, do you know where food comes from? Have you seen a farm? Sir, I had to pause and I was like, let's talk about bicycles. If every person rode a bike, it would be unsustainable. We'd clog the streets. Everyone would crash into each other, right? Does or can everyone ride a bike? No, not every person is physically capable of nor wants to forage. So to say, well, if everyone can't do it, it's not sustainable, to me is not really a super strong argument. On the opposite side of that, do people cause destruction with overharvesting of plants? Absolutely. And I think it's just so important for us to slow down, zoom out, and really take looks at individual plant populations before we can say all of this type of plant is okay to take, or all of this type of plant is always not okay to take, because each individual, each section of plants growing need to be seen as individuals they are, just like us, right? And I really tried in this book to focus on invasive plants because they are such good medicine. I'm just like, keep going back to honeysuckle. Anytime I have a sore throat, I always have so much honeysuckle flower tincture. And the Japanese Kampo medicine really honors the silver and gold, which in Chinese medicine, the words to describe honeysuckle means silver and gold because they make yellow and white flowers, which is so cool. And their unopening buds are some of their best medicine, and they make an excellent tincture, which I use for a lot of upper respiratory, especially sore throat kind of situations. And I just love that they're everywhere. It's amazing. So I really hope as you navigate this book, if you choose to, that you could just make medicine with the invasives and you have a beautiful apothecary. Wouldn't that be cool? I think that's amazing. Oh, USDA says invasives are a species that is non-native. They're aliens to the ecosystem under consideration and whose introduction causes or is likely to cause economic or environmental harm or harm to human health. Economic is the first thing. Like bindweed, those little morning glories. Are they really that bad? No, but they get stuck in tractors. That's why people don't like them. I think they're pretty. Rare plants. So I am a sensitive baby. I have 4 planets in Cancer. I know I'm a big crybaby. I'm literally getting the words crybaby tattooed to my body in a month. I wrote about rare plants in my book, and it's funny. I've had a lot of talks about this with different people. One thing I've noticed with my students, I've taught my hedgecraft course now for 10 years, teaching people how to identify plants and make medicine and food with them. And I teach my students how to identify ginseng, how to identify ramps, how to identify ghost pipe, how to identify rare plants. Because I can't tell you how many times people have walked up to me with a handful of ghost pipes. What's this? If you know what something is, you can much better protect it. If you are empowered with the knowledge to see something and identify it, you can share it with a friend and say, hey, look, that's a rare plant. Careful we don't drive over that or we don't dig that up. Just like I said earlier, I think that we have a big problem with gatekeeping information in herbalism, and it comes from a really good place. It comes from a place of wanting to protect, but sometimes it goes into a place of wanting to feel like we're in the cool secret club and everybody else doesn't get to know the cool secret stuff that we know. And I don't want to be a part of that. So to me, I did write about these plants because when we say what the plants are actually good for as well, instead of what TikTok says they're good for, I love TikTok. Don't get me wrong. I spent a lot of time on TikTok, which is why I had to delete it off my phone. I have a problem. I think that if we actually look at what the plant's really indicated for, we will use it only then rather than, oh, ghost pipe is a pain reliever, right? Well, yes, and right. When is it really aligned for that purpose? So to me, giving people, empowering and trusting people who are reaching for herbal knowledge, trusting them and saying, I'm going to give this to you. I trust you. You're going to hold this now too, and you're going to teach someone else this. I want to believe that we live in a community that can do that. I'm going to just choose to take that risk and say yes to that because somebody did it for me. And I'm so grateful that somebody showed me how to do that, you know? And I don't deserve to know it any more than anybody else does. So I wrote about some rare plants in here, and I hope that it helps clarify, like, when would you really use golden seal? When is it actually indicated? It is not antibiotic unless it touches the tissue it is treating. It is not a systemic antibiotic, right? So there's some things like that that I've learned from other teachers that I'm just excited to get aligned with that plant and kind of dispel some of those myths. And to me, when we give accurate information about plants, we help preserve them, in my opinion. And I was talking about that with one of my colleagues, Jim McDonald, at the Michigan Great Lakes Herb Fair. Yeah, giving accurate information, if we purposefully don't share that, why would people trust us as herbalists? You know, but it is a risk. Once again, none of these things are black or white. There's always a gray area of risk in anything to do with plants, including teaching about them. So I want to kind of show you how I laid out this book with the example of witch hazel. I love witch hazel. Is witch hazel native or introduced? It is native. Look at the Latin name, Virginiana. It has a little clue for us. Not always, but sometimes Latin names will tell you a clue about the plant. Maybe something about how it flowers, something about where it's from. What weird old guy discovered it? Yeah. Like one of my favorites is our native plantain, like Rugal. Who is that? Who is that guy? They named the plantain after him. So witch hazel, in my book, you'll find the chapter will be headed by the name of the plant. And underneath it'll say some common names. And if I could find a commonly used name not in English, I've also included that there. So we know that English is definitely not the most predominant language spoken in the world. So we have some names for plants in Farsi or in different indigenous languages or in Hindi or in Chinese or Korean, depending on where the plant is from and whose voices would most likely be saying their name. We also have the Latin names. And like I said, Latin names or binomial nomenclature gives us the genus and species of the plant, and I'll include that as well. Of course, there's always the fear that I did an old one that's changed because they're constantly changing them and I can't keep up with them. I'm not a great Latin names girly, y'all. I'm so sorry. And then we have the family. Who are they related to? We include some cautions, which I tried to include any drug interactions there with the name of the drugs. And where do they come from? And that's something I just feel so passionate about. I'm not a clinical herbalist. You know, my work is to tell the stories of plants. That's what I really feel called to on this earth to do, and to be like a plant historian. I love helping people feel better with herbs. And also, what I really love is saying, hey, have you ever heard about this plant? Do you know what weird, cool thing that they did with it magically? Have you heard the story of this person who changed history with this plant? You know, there's something like that for every one of them. And also, oftentimes when you look at a plant, it'll say it's from Europe and Asia. It's not from Europe and Asia. It's also from North Africa, or it's from even Eastern Europe. There's parts of Asia, other parts of Asia, different parts of the world are erased from the history of herbalism for obvious reasons because of white supremacy. And so we have to say and keep researching and double check and look at multiple sources to figure out where did that plant originate and how can I find out. So I did my best to really dig and make sure I had the most accurate, up-to-date information. And in 5 years, it'll probably be different because we keep learning more with genetics about plants, which is so cool. And then, of course, which parts of the plant should you use? And which parts should you absolutely not use, if so? And the next part, the energetics and properties of the plant. I was so resistant to energetics in plants for so long. I don't know why, because I'm really wooey. I know, right? It's just like, I was like, hot, dry. This plant's neither hot nor dry. It's wet. I touched it. It's damp. I just like didn't understand they meant. Let's say you have a really phlegmy cough, a wet cough, and you feel clammy and cool to the touch. You're like cool, clammy, and phlegmy. You might want a warming and drying herb, right? To help treat that wet, damp condition. It's kind of a shorthand. It is a folk way of quickly communicating our symptoms and how we are constitutionally in our bodies and how the illness is showing symptoms in our unique terrain in our body. And how can the nature of the herb be aligned with that need? And I was like, oh, it's kind of like a little Dewey Decimal System in my brain. I can say, what are all the hot, dry herbs that I know? And I can kind of more quickly narrow down what herb I might like to use for that condition. So I have become reformed in my dislike of energetics. Thank you also again to Jim McDonald for changing my mind about that. I don't know why I was being such a poop about it. And taste goes along with that as well. Does a plant have a sweet taste? Is it spicy like cayenne? Is it spicy like ginger? Is it sour? Like, what is its taste? The taste lets us know a lot about what chemicals are in the plant and how it might act in our bodies. I did include substitutions because, especially with the rare plants, kind of thinking about examples of other ones you could use instead of those plants. Or if you just can't get them or have access to them, I tried to put similar plants, but not, obviously, they don't do the exact same things. And then wildcrafting notes, I included some tips and tricks that I use. Like in birch harvesting, you can often just find branches on the ground. Just pick them up off the ground. You don't even have to cut them. Or cherry, just pick them up off the ground. Just make sure they're fully dried before you make medicine with them. And then, of course, traditional and modern uses with citations. We love to see it. I spelled Patricia Caristi Howell's name wrong in the bibliography. That was my bad. She told me. I'm so sorry, Patricia. And I give recipes. I give 1 to 3 recipes for each plant to help you with proportions. And I also included notebook page kind of, if you're making your own herbal notebook, this is like one way you could organize information, but you can do it anyway. This is just how I chose to do it. So I'll give you a few examples of some herbs. And at the end, let me check the time. When does this go to? Oh, sick. Okay, great. All right, I don't want to keep it really too long, but let's start with agrimony. Does anyone have any questions so far? Heck yeah. Oh, please.
Hey, where did these illustrations come from?
Sarah asked, where did these illustrations come from? This is my first illustrated book. I drew them. Oh, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. You don't have to clap. Oh my God. I love you, Sarah. Thank you. Yeah, I got to illustrate this book. I wish I had some more time to do more illustrations, but we got some good ones in. And I also can tattoo all these on people. I got rights to them, which is very exciting. Do you have a question, my dear? Oh, heck yeah. You're like, I'm trying to get that agrimony tat. Yeah. I love the word agrimony. It just feels kind of spooky and witchy. Like I've always loved that plant name. I've always felt really attracted to this plant. I feel like it's one we turn to a lot in the forest. There's lots of different species. We actually have quite a few in North America. There's about 15, I think, agrimonia. Mark, please correct me if I'm wrong, if you know that off the top of your head. And Agrimonia eupatoria is often one that we use in medicine, and it's native to Europe, North Africa, Southwest Asia, and Macronesia. and it was introduced to North America. We have Agramonia pilosa, native to Asia and Eastern Europe, and we have Agramonia gryposala and parviflora, and I see a lot of these ones used in the herbal literature. And of course, all of the agremonias are probably lovely astringents, because what family are they in? The rose family. They're one of the tiny roses. And I think that's so fun. They're drying, astringent, and vulnerary. They're wound herbs. And they're also cooling, nervine, and relaxant to tissues, which is super fun. And it comes from the Greek word agramon, which is believed to refer to cataracts in the eyes. They were originally used to treat eye issues in ancient Greece. And they were also used in wine to treat dysentery. If you've ever played Oregon Trail, you know what I'm talking about. Born in 87 here, coming in hot. Yep, I know, right? But it's an astringent, as I said before. So astringents tighten loose tissues, especially of the bowel, which is nice. And before, people had the moonshine still of the Appalachian Mountains, wine was largely used to make infused in tinctures, because people had not yet figured out how to distill. So you find lots of infused wines in old herbals, which is very interesting. And I actually included a recipe for a tonic wine in this chapter. If you ingest alcohol, it's a good one to take by the teaspoonful for messy guts, rumbly tummy. It was also used to treat ulcers for the same reason, to help tighten those irritated tissues, and is used as a fault of the liver herb. And Anglo-Saxons called it the garcleave, and it's used for snake bites. And there's mugwort and vinegar were often mixed with it in Anglo-Saxon England for all types of issues, especially to stop bleeding and make poultices or smushed up warm plants on the skin. And in Iraq, agrimony was used as a strengthening medicine and was also used to bring on menses and for parasites as a tea, and also to treat diseases of the skin, which makes sense being a rose family plant. In America, in Cherokee, it is called alasagalogi, and it was used as a tonic and blood purifier, and it's still called that today. And it's also used as infusions for bleeding, urinary issues, and more. And they actually use the root, which is a unique use to the Cherokee people. Today, I use agrimony as a gentle astringent. I use it as a nervine. That's probably actually what I personally reach for it for most. It actually tastes lovely. Has anyone ever had agrimony tea? Oh my gosh, y'all have to try it. It's really abundant and lovely. I think it smells wonderful. Mark, you have had it before? I think it's really lovely. It's very mild tasting. I think it's nice for children. It's very, very gentle medicine. And it is a great wound herb. It's a good one to brew up a tea and soak, a splintered foot or a hurt finger. You can mix it with calendula or marshmallow root or plantain leaf for gut discomforts. And it's just soothing and mildly moistening. It's just, with any astringent, you don't want to over dry yourself. So just be careful not to take too much of it. There's also some evidence that it helps lower blood sugar. So it's a great thing to have after meals as a digestive and blood sugar evener outer, which is a technical term. That's what I'm talking about with that folk knowledge, making up terms since the year 1500 BCE. And in this chapter, I give you my agrimony medicinal wine, which you do not drink like a cup of wine. You take either warmed up in water, or you can take with a teaspoonful when you have a sore stomach. And I mix it with oak bark to just ramp up that astringent use. Another one of our amazing native astringents. One thing I really wanted to do with this book was write about herbs I don't see commonly used that are safe and pretty abundantly available. And apple, to me, I feel like is kind of the poster child of that. You would have seen apple written about in a lot of old herbals pretty extensively. Pop quiz, where are apples from? What part of the world do they originate from? Excellent. They're from Kazakhstan. Yes. And it says it right there. You know what? I'm really a great teacher. I'm so sorry. So it comes from, it's amazing how apple focused this part of the world was, hence the town name, Almaty, which is the word for apple in Kazakh. And it is insane. There are more than 7,500 species of apples, which is so cool, more than half of which grow in China. And there are 3 varieties native to North America, mostly crabapple types, which is so special. Malleus coronia, Fusca, and Ioannis. And there's also, I love crab apples. I think they're kind of an underutilized and underappreciated fruit. They're so beautiful too. Their flowers are gorgeous. An apple is also in the rose family. So we can assume that it might also be astringent. This is my cool drawing of an apple. Wow. So I'm very interested in Anglo-Saxon medicine. My ancestors, I'm 50% English roughly and Scottish. And I've been getting a lot out of connecting with my ancestors through learning what herbs they used for medicine so I can more fully support my friends in the BIPOC world, learning their ancestral medicine and not appropriating it for my own uses. And Anglo-Saxon medicine was written about extensively because they wrote a lot, monks wrote a lot of stuff down in the 1000s. And the 9 herbs charm is a 9th century, or excuse me, a 10th century charm that names, it is a spoken spell meant to be sung into the mouth and each ear of a hurt person with a wound. And in these 9 herbs, one of which is crabapple, the first of which is Una, mother of herbs, mugwort. And there's one mystery herb that no one knows what it is. And all of them might be mystery herbs that people argue about. But it's called vergulu in Old English, which is very cool. And it is they say this is the herb called vergulu. The person that's doing the spell sings over each herb as they give them to the patient. And this is in a Christianized country too, which I think is amazing that they were still doing this in the 1000s, the 1000s, if you will. This is the herb called vergulu. A seal sent this forth across the sea's spine for the harm of poison. So if somebody had a staph infection, most likely an infected wound, this 9 herbs charm would be employed using all these herbs. But apple would probably be chosen for its astringent abilities to draw together irritated tissue. And my girl Hildegard von Bingen, magical nun, who definitely would have hated my guts. I hate it because I just painted an icon picture for her the other day, and she's like, probably like, don't do that, you weird witch. But in the early Middle Ages, and she was born in 1098 BC in what is now Germany. She was a visionary mystic nun. She used the sap of apple trees for kidney issues. And she would also use the leaves of apple trees pounded and mixed with wine and grapevine. The water, if you've ever cut a grapevine, have you ever done that? Oh, my friend showed me how to do this, and you can drink the water that shoots out of the vine. It's incredible. You've done this, Mark. Yeah. It's a really fun way to have a drink in the forest if you can't find any fresh water in our area because we have so much, sometimes invasive grapevine and some native ones as well. But you would put this in your eyes to relieve foggy vision, which is super interesting. Also, it was believed that eating apples in general was good for the liver and things like that. And in traditional Chinese medicine, the different color apples were actually aligned with different parts of the body, which I think is so beautiful. And during different seasons, I feel like Chinese medicine and Ayurveda are both very good at integrating seasonality into medicine and how our bodies are different at different seasons. And during the fall and winter, when the body is in yin excess, apples were eaten to help eliminate the heat that brings dehydration to the body. They're moistening. So in my mind, this makes a lot of sense energetically. They were also considered a lung herb and were to help moisten lungs to help recover, especially from dry coughs and colds. They're also used for hair loss, normalizing the bowels, and much more. I have to say, I feel like apples definitely normalize the bowel from personal experience. Many of my students are like, can we go one day without you talking about poop? I'm like, no, that couldn't be me. I won't give it up. Christopher Sauer is an early American settler herbalist, and he was from Germany originally, and he recommends cider for kidney issues like kidney stones or gravel, as you'll see it referred to in old books. And hot roasted sweet apples were used as poultices, which I think actually would be a lovely poultice for many different issues, especially like hard, crusty scabs. I personally think hot poultice of apple would be lovely and probably pretty easy to access to use. In Southern folk medicine, apple tree inner bark has been used for heartburn and acidity of the stomach. And one of my friends, who's an older gentleman from Silo, told me that it has to be scraped upward, east, to make it work, just like persimmon bark. which is a practice that European ancestral Appalachians got from Cherokee and Choctaw people using directional bark scraping. And you'd make a tea or a syrup from the bark or inner leaves, or excuse me, from the bark or the leaves in summer for a bad stomach, or if your stomach is burning, like you have acidic heartburn. And it settles the stomach. It's also a long time remedy for diarrhea and loose stools. I did it again. Oops, I did it again. I talked about poop. Okay, I'm so sorry. So all members of the rose family are very rich in tannins, which if you like wine, you're probably familiar with. It's what makes you go, that dry feeling in your mouth. And it's my understanding, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, that tannins make your mouth feel dry because they aggregate water molecules around themselves, causing your mouth to feel that suck away of the water. And they have a lot of binding sites available to steal those H2O molecules. So today, the way I work with apple, at least, is to make an infusion of leaves and bark and use that as a all-around astringent. It's a pretty gentle one. Oak bark is usually what I reach for like a pretty strong one. As a mouthwash, it's really lovely. It's great. I get bleeding gums a lot from just like years of smoking cigarettes, and I feel like I'm still healing, 6 years after quitting smoking. I'm still kind of remediating that damage I did to my gums. And mouthwashes of oak bark and of apple or other astringent barks are excellent if you have kind of looser bleeding kind of gums. Eating apples and drinking cider can also help prevent certain types of cancer. It's actually pretty well researched that the nutrients that they supply are part of a well-balanced approach to preventing cancer nutritionally. And they're especially helpful with lung, liver, and colon cancer. Leaf poultices can also be used on the eyes, which are totally lovely. I usually put them in some kind of clean, like cheesecloth, so you don't get leaves in your eyes. And eating fresh tart apples is definitely a lovely digestive if you can tolerate them. If you have IBS, it might be a little bit too intense for your tummy, so careful there. And the soluble fiber in apples also helps us to lower cholesterol, if that's something you want to do. Any questions so far? Awesome. I'll tell you about a few more herbs and then we'll open up the floor for some questions. Birch has got to be one of my favorite trees. Is anyone else in love with birch? The rune Berkana has a B. I always think like as Becky Beyer, that's probably my rune, right? Because I'm BB. And it also is the rune for birch in Proto-Germanic language. So Betula or Betula, the genus has about 30 to 60 species worldwide, and they can hybridize, which makes them very hard to ID. So you need to go on a tree walk with Mark Williams to learn how to ID your birches. And there are lots of amazing ones. My favorite is probably the black birch or the cherry birch, Betula lenta, referring to its little slashes or lenticels down its bark. And in Europe, Asia, and North Africa, we also have the downy birch and the silver birch, which are common in both places, in all three places. So birches are used as medicine all over the globe, and a lot of it is because they contain salicylates, methyl salicylates, and otherwise. And they're used for arthritis, which if you look in herbals, the number one health issue people are treating is arthritis. Because if we're lucky enough to live a long time, we all will get it. It's something we will all deal with. We may not all get a cataract or all get a broken leg, but we will all get arthritis if we are blessed to live to old age. I already have it in my ripe old age of 38. So we also use it for things like urinary tract issues and fevers as well. Betula lenta is also our native black birch, is very, very important in indigenous medicine. It was used by Cherokee folks as a leaf tea for dysentery, for that astringent action. Have you ever drank the leaves tea of black birch? So I made some recently. It is so bitter. I was shook. It's like extremely bitter and minty. It's kind of good, but it's kind of bad in a good way. And I like bitter. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so bitter. The Chippewa Nation also uses it traditionally for dysentery and pneumonia, as well as heart issues, which I think is interesting because it's also used for kidney issues to help remove excess fluid from the body, which can sometimes happen when we have heart issues. And the Mohegan also used the bark infusion as a spring tonic, and it's a tradition that was also adopted by white settlers and enslaved peoples in the South. And black birch became an important part of Appalachian folk spring tonics, which I have a cute zine about available in the front that Liberty edited and produced for me. Thank you, Liberty. The Iroquois people also made a pleasant and stimulating tea from the twigs, mostly for fun and for energy, and if your body felt kind of tired and sore, and for colds and fevers. I love that black birch smells like wintergreen, and it was the original plant used to render wintergreen flavoring until they figured out how to make it out of hexanes in a lab. I have actually made fake wintergreen in a lab, and it is very easy to do, and it smells very strongly, and it is completely not safe for consumption, but it's used a lot in cleaning products and things like that today. So today, the bark is really my favorite way to work with black birch. And one of my wild crafting tips is to just wait for storms to knock the branches down. You'll find them all the time. And this is not like cherry. You can use the bark any time of year, in my opinion. We like to get it in the spring or fall, though generally speaking, it's a little easier to peel off when the liquid is moving up and down the tree as they're both getting ready to make their leaves and going ahead and letting go of their leaves and pulling their liquids back down for winter. I use black birch a lot topically. I actually, a couple years ago, I learned that in Russia, it was really commonly used for wound healing. So I started including it in my oils for salves for wounds. I love to mix it with calendula. And I also love to use it for headaches, cramps, and pain in the body. I actually had I didn't include this in the book, but I had a very incredible and kind of anecdotal experience with black birch where a student of mine, he's probably in his mid 60s and had had black mold poisoning, very sick from black mold, constant headache for over a year every day. And he was taking the wildcrafting course that I'll be teaching this weekend with some of my friends here in this audience at Wild Abundance. And he drank a whole quart of black birch tea just because nobody else wanted to drink any more of it. And we're like, does anyone else want the rest of this tea? And he drank the whole thing. The next morning he came down for class and he's like, I have no headache today. And I really think it's because I drank all that black birch tea because within about 30 minutes of drinking it, my headache went away. And I was so shook. And so then he drank at least a quart of it every day, the rest of class. And I hope it's still helping him. I have to reach out and see. But it is a really great for tension headaches. It's not great for cluster migraines and like chronic migraines. I would say it doesn't really touch that type of pain, but it's very good for, stress, tension, dehydration, headaches, especially the ones that go from like here to here, I find. You know how sometimes you can get like a headache in the back of your head? I don't find that it really touches that type of pain as much. You can use the twigs, the leaf, and the bark from the birch. And also, I think that it just smells great. And I often just rub the salve on myself because it smells nice. It smells like wintergreen. And the oxymel, anyone know what an oxymel is? Yeah, you're like, I know what an oxymel is vinegar and honey medicine that originates in ancient Persia and is an excellent and easy way to preserve medicine without alcohol. So the birch oxymel, top-notch flavor, I have to say. It makes a great chicken marinade or mushroom marinade. And it's just absolutely delicious. And I use that just as I would the tincture or alcohol extract. It's lovely. We love black walnut. Right now, they are pooping their nuts all over the place and smashing onto the metal roof of my woodshed so loud at night, and scaring the absolute crap out of me. This is an incredible native tree and also kind of like an adult joke in its Latin name because it means the gonads of Jupiter, juglans, which is very funny. And these have been used and almost cultivated, basically selected for the largest, tastiest nuts over time. And they're different than the English or Persian walnuts, which have a totally different flavor. And some people find they don't like black walnut because it tastes different than the other walnuts. But I think they're fantastic. If you don't like them, get vanilla ice cream and put them on it, and you will like them. That's one of my favorite ways to eat them. You can see why they're called the gonads of Jupiter. I'm so sorry. Yeah, it means the nut of Jupiter in Latin, and some historians believe it does refer to the god Jupiter's nethers. It may also mean the glands of Jupiter. And this accounts for the walnut's connection with fertility and love. And we see this today. Carrying a nut in your pocket of almost any type, but particularly a buckeye or an acorn, is good luck and promotes fertility in many cultures. And here in Appalachia, the buckeye especially is used for that purpose. But you actually see that practice of carrying a nut in the pocket to bring good luck or healing or fertility to people around the world where nut trees grow. Dionysus was a very bad man, and he has some naughty stories that associate him with this that I'll let you read in the book. And Caria is the Latin name of what other nut tree? Does anyone know? Huh? You get an A plus. I love that. Thank you. It's a hickory tree family or genus, and I think it's wild. So many of our Greek names give Latin names of plants that they got turned into while being chased by some goon. So the ancient Greeks had a lot of beliefs about their native walnut. But here in American folk medicine, and particularly Southern American folk medicine, the antifungal and antiparasitic powers of this amazing tree are really the most celebrated. And just chewing the leaves was a common remedy. And you just suck the juice between. You can do this yourself. I wouldn't swallow a ton of it. It can make you a little sick to the stomach. But if you have thrush in the mouth or fungal, like candida overgrowth in the tongue or mouth, chew the leaves. You like suck the juice through your mouth and swish it around in your mouth with some water, and just do that a couple times a day and then spit it out, rinse your mouth out with clean water. And that is a classic folk remedy for fungal infections of the mouth. The green holes are probably what you're more familiar with if you work with herbs. And those are what's usually tinctured for our antiparasitic tinctures, which is usually paired with wormwood, right? Another wormy guy. I always tell people, if you take black walnut, it works. Be prepared. It can be disturbing, but don't take it willy-nilly. Like, be ready for it to work. You will see a worm. I'm so sorry. But a little worms is okay. A lot of worms is not okay. Leaf decoctions were used a lot as antiseptic washes for wounds and sores, which is another use that has kind of fallen out of fashion, and I think is something you can still do very readily, that it can stain your skin if you have fair skin or turn it kind of yellowish, depending on your skin color. It also will stain your fingernail beds and things, so just careful to wear gloves if you're handling this a lot. You can always tell who's been in the nuts in the fall in Asheville because you see they have it looks like they have brown fingernail paint. It was also used to treat irritation and inflammation of the intestines by the eclectic herbalists of the early 19th century, and was definitely helpful for lots of intestinal infections. I would often pair it with golden seal powder for that purpose, or a berberine containing sustainable herb like barberry. Catnip. I'm obsessed with catnip. This is a plant. I love cats, so maybe that's why I like catnip. But I think catnip is also an underutilized herb. Does anyone use catnip regularly in their herbal practice? Yeah, I really love it. It's so amazing. And it has a really beautiful history in Black Southern folk medicine that doesn't really get talked about a lot, and was used for just about everything from colicky babies, which is something that everybody used it for. And it grows all over the world. It's a very common plant because it's in the mint family. So it's just really good at living. It can grow in all kinds of conditions. And in general, it's often used as a nervine and to calm frazzled nerves or fussy situations. Being in the mint family, I think it was often turned to for colicky babies or gas or fussy children because it's just so tough on little guys' stomachs when you're becoming a human slowly in the post-uterine world. I feel like it's kind of hard to figure out how to digest stuff really good. It's like a great medicine for that. It was also used as a wash for hives in Appalachian and Southern folk medicine, and in Black Southern folk medicine and hoodoo. Washing a child with certain types of washes to bring out the measles is a folk way of describing a belief that was held that a child's measles would grow inwards and actually kill them if something wasn't done to them to cause them to express. And catnip tea is one of the things you could like dip your child into or wet them with, and it would help express the measles. That isn't necessarily like how measles works, but in a folk understanding, this is a great remedy for fever and also is soothing to the skin. So even if it's not necessarily causing that to happen, it's a helpful herb nonetheless. Does that make sense? With folk medicine, it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong scientifically. Often the remedy in some way provides relief, even if it's for different reasons than the person at the time applying it thought. And I think that's so amazing. That's why I'm so interested in folk medicine. It tells us so much about our ancestors and the ancestors of the lands that we live on by wondering and knowing, like, what were they thinking when they chose this herb? Why did they choose it? and how did they apply it? And I just feel so interested in those stories. I love catnip and we grow a lot of it. And it's really great if you're freaking out and you feel irritated and hot and anxious. A cup of cool catnip tea is just what the doctor ordered, what the folk doctor ordered. You can also always give it to your cats. For some reason, the dried catnip specifically really makes certain cats go wild. And I'm not exactly sure how that works, but if anyone knows more, please tell me. And it's often used hot to break a fever. It would have been paired with things like sage or bone set. And it's just pretty spectacular for those things. I like it too if you've eaten a big meal and you have like a bellyache or gas. It's a really gentle digestive and it tastes really nice. You could add some honey too if you don't like the taste on its own. It's very herby. It's also great to mix with things like milky oats, chamomile, or linden for children, or lemon balm, especially if they're very anxious before bedtime. It could be a great, like, let's get ready for bed ritual with your children. And it's also just fun to grow, especially if you have a pet cat and you have children together. My cat doesn't like catnip, and I'm really disappointed because we grow a lot of it. And oh yeah, it's just so amazing. And in the Himalayan regions too, like in India and Pakistan and Nepal and China and Turkey and Iran, it was also used a lot for coughs and colds, which you can totally still use catnip for today and mix it into your colds and flus blend because it's so easy to grow. It can get really weedy though, so just watch out if you grow it. Dill. I'm a big dill fan. I realize I'm saying this about every herb because, of course, I am because I chose them out of the 10,000 species of plants on the planet to write about. And I think, I don't know if I can show you guys this, but my publisher did this funny thing where they like kind of made stamps out of some of my illustrations and just like ghost stamped it around. I love it. It's really cute. I will say Simon and Schuster do a mean layout. They're really great at that. And I love dill because it's kind of evil. If you look at the folklore of dill, it's like a little bit evil. You wouldn't expect it. It's a little bit devilish. And it was used originally a lot in Ayurvedic medicine to help with hunger pangs, especially when people were fasting for religious purposes. You could chew the seeds to help you get through your spiritual fast. And also, they're used as a galactagogue, one of the coolest herbal words, to promote milk flow and lactation and help soothe upset stomachs, a lot like fennel seeds, which their flavor reminds me of a lot. And I just love dill. I love it in my omelets. That's my favorite place to have it. And they're so pungent. It has been used in ancient Egypt for 5,000 years and is one of the herbs mentioned in those papyruses that I mentioned. And it was used to treat headaches. It makes sense. It's very aromatic. It's a strong smell. And I just think that's amazing. It's also the best flavor for pickles, which I personally love. And it's always been used as a breath freshener, which before the toothbrush seems like an important herbal remedy, especially if you're close talking, with someone or breathing in your own breath, as I am. Dill both attracted the devil and repelled it in early European folklore. It was believed to be a repellent of witchcraft and also was used in ceremonial magic, which I tried not to get too magic in this book, y'all. I've written other books where it's only about magic. So this one I made for the masses that may be uninterested in the magic, but I snuck a little bit in there. I did sneak a little bit in there. Don't worry. And in Chinese medicine, dill is used to dispel colds and is also used to season meats to make them more digestible, which I think makes total sense because they're so aromatic. And they also generally were used to treat a lack of appetite. So interesting how in one culture in India, they're using them to stop appetite, and in another, they're using it to stimulate appetite. One of the most amazing things about plant lore is how different cultures glean different information about the same plant. And I think that's what it makes it so beautiful and so interesting to me. And I just love dill. I actually like to make like a dill cordial for stomach issues. I think it tastes really interesting. You can make that with or without alcohol. You can make a dill vinegar also, which is stunning as a salad dressing and as a digestive. And I'm so sad my dill did not do well this year. Anybody else grow dill this year? Mine got really bad powdery mildew. It's been so wet. I'm very sad. The poultice of dill was also used traditionally on the abdomen for hernias, which I found really interesting. There it is. This is the single illustration that wasn't stamped around a whole bunch. Yeah, I use it a lot for gas, and it can be used for when you're nursing. It's safe to use in pregnancy, which is really nice. Once again, I'm not a doctor. I have also never been pregnant, so I'm not the person to ask about what herbs are or are not safe in pregnancy, but I did my best to try to make sure I have accurate info on that. We always want to double check with someone more experienced before we introduce an herb into a person who's pregnant's body or an infant. Just as a side note. And yeah, I think of dill as a carminative, a gas relieving, warming, stimulating, digestive tonic that is great for relieving gas, right alongside fennel. I always think of them as substitutions for one another. I love fennel as more sweet and dill as more sour, which I think is really interesting. You can also use the plant warmed on clogged duct on the breast when lactating. And not only does that provide some great relief from a clogged duct, but it smells great. So dual purpose. Smell like a pickle, feel better. Santal 33, watch out. Okay, sorry, that was a perfume joke. And you can also use the tincture as an antiparasitic. I like to pair it with black walnut or with wormwood in small doses. It's definitely kind of intense on the stomach because it's so aromatic. And I tincture the crushed ripening seeds with the leaf and a little bit of the stalk. You can also use it topically for ringworms, scabies, cradle cap, and other infections that are fungal in nature. And it's also useful as a soak for vaginal candida. And you can even use it as a dip for jock itch if you want to put it in a sitz bath. Oh, did I accidentally? Oh, I see what I did here. I was like, wait, I'm talking about black walnut. Forget everything I just said. I accidentally threw a slide in between two slides. Whoops. We'll jump ahead. Dill is not antifungal per se. It is a little bit for sure because it's aromatic, but I would turn to black walnut for jock itch for sure. My bad. Okay. So ghost pipe is one of the plants that I chose to talk about, and there's a lot of controversy about this plant online right now. If you look up ghost pipe, you'll see people said this plant has granotoxin in it, which is a what do they call it? A nerve toxin or a so there's some theory that ghost pipe is in the Ericaceae family and the Heath family. And it, like rhododendron, which is one of its cousins, could produce granotoxin, which is poisonous. However, I recently found a study which I did not find when I wrote the book, so I want to add this as an addendum. There was a student from Penn State, and they recently tested 50 samples of ghost pipe. None of them had detectable granotoxin. It's my opinion that there is not a worry about granotoxin poisoning when taking ghost pipe. However, the toxic dose is unknown. I myself have taken this plant a lot as a tincture and have never had any ill effects, but I do know people who have felt like out of body if they've taken too much. The main issue with this plant is that it is rare, but there are rarer plants, and I'm not exactly sure. Every couple of years, we see the internet really get on the ghost pipe train, and I think a lot of it comes from the fact that this plant is sacred in indigenous tradition, so it's best not to obviously over harvest it. Historically, people harvested the whole plant, roots and all, to tincture. You do not do that. We don't pull the roots out of this plant. In my personal belief, I have found places where it is sustainable to take a few pieces and make a small amount of tincture. And because we take it by the drop dose, a small jar this big of tincture may last you your entire lifetime. So to me, I think there's a lot of nuance to this plant, and it's a really good example of getting personal with a specific population of a plant before we're able to really make any big statements like, if you touch this plant, you are a monster. I hear that a lot online. There's a lot of fear mongering about its toxicity. Like, let's get curious about it and really look at it instead of, I've even seen people say, no indigenous people use this plant. That's a myth. And that's not true. You definitely used a lot in indigenous medicine. And I think I want to get curious about like being careful with how we communicate about plants. What's our intention with how we're communicating about it? What do we want to happen because of how we're communicating about it? And I don't know, of course, I'm just one person. These are just my opinions. Why ghost pipe inspires this in people? Because I see every about 5 to 6 years, I see it. Have you guys seen this, the infographics going around about it? I just get so curious where that's coming from because we actually aren't even sure if ghost pipe is very rare. There's actually not definitive data proving that it is extremely rare. And that's where I get curious. And there must be more to the story, and I'd like to know what it is. But for me, when we look at it, I don't think this plant has a danger of granotoxin poisoning. I just don't see any evidence that that's true. Usually it's given in 1 to 3 drop doses, not big tincture doses. However, here's the other side of that story. On TikTok, you'll see people say ghost pipe is a pain relieving tincture, and people are taking big doses of it. We got to be really specific with when we're using plants. This plant is particularly indicated for people who are like having very bad trips on drugs like LSD, people who have just had surgeries or are in very severe pain. And I have used it myself after a hysterectomy, and I actually found no pain relief with it. Many people experience no pain relief with it. So you'll see this as well with wild lettuce. They'll say it's backyard opium. It's not. A lot of people have no pain relief from this plant. So being really particular about how we communicate about plants is so important, because not only may we give someone who's in chronic pain false hope that it might help, but also we could support the overharvest of a plant that may not be rare yet, but soon could be. And I feel like I just contradicted myself at every point when talking about this, but I think ghost pipe is one of the poster children of the complexities of herbalism, and especially in the digital age, and especially in the age of AI books, and especially in the age of not knowing where we're getting information from and not learning from real people that we're in collaborative, reflective community with. Does anyone want to add anything about ghost pipe there? Please. The person just said you have to tincture it immediately, right? Yes, you do. Because what happens if you leave it out to the air? It blackens and starts to kind of like dissolve. That's why a lot of people think ghost pipe is a mushroom, but it's actually a non-chlorophyll producing plant. And you get why it looks like a mushroom, because it's all white. It's beautiful. It's just stunning. The other reason this plant is really important for us to protect and accurately share information about is because you cannot grow it. We haven't figured it out because it's hemiparasitic or to parasitic, and it takes nutrients and sugars from its neighbors. So it's really hard to grow it all by itself, just like pedicularis, another plant that is very special and rare. So I think ghost pipe is such a good one for us to talk about just really openly. And also, one thing I noticed in herbalism is, I go back. These are these little guys. They're spooky roots. They're so amazing. Like, they inspire such awe. I understand why we're so fixated on them. But once again, I just want to caution people. Like, I've just seen like the wildest communications about this plant online, and I'm so curious where that's coming from. I'm like, what is happening? Am I not? So nobody's telling me something about this. But I see this plant all the time. Where we live, I think it's actually quite abundant, but in other places, it's probably not. And that's what's also important to say about knowing where you are and where you are working with plants, right? And I think because it can't be grown, that is just something really important for us to think about. They also grow in Asia, which is really beautiful. And has anyone ever seen the pink ones around here? Who's that? It's actually a totally different plant. Did you know? Yeah, the pine saps. They're so sweet. They're like hot pink versions of the ghost pipe. They're a little narrower and they stick kind of straight up a little bit more. They don't always have the bell curved down, but I think it's hypop. What's the Latin name of wine set? I love you so much. This is one of my teachers, Mark Williams, and one of the people that first taught me how to teach about plants. One of my mentors in how to teach, which we all need. I think I felt so lucky I got to learn from Mark, and I still get to all the time. Oh, you're the best. I'm not good at remembering Latin names, and that is something that I really appreciate that people can do. There's no known medicinal uses today of the pine sap. So I have seen online people saying, oh yeah, just tincture them, it's fine. There's actually not any research on that. So I'd really hesitate to say, don't do that. Don't ingest them. We don't actually know. And they don't necessarily have a long history of medicinal use in the same way that ghost pipe does. Ghost pipes were used a lot as poultices for sores. They would be smashed up and cooked down into that purpley black mass that they turn into with hot water, especially if someone had like a leg sore that just wasn't healing well. Slow to heal sores. Goldenrod is a great substitution for that, in my opinion, and also traditionally used in North America for that purpose. Cree folks also chewed up the roots and tops of the ghost pipes for toothaches historically. And they're also used in love charms and love medicine in different indigenous groups. And the above ground portions were used for body pain that you get from colds and flus, like when you get bone break fever and your body hurts really badly. And if you had like warts or bunions or something like that, that were really prominent visible bumps on the body, in Cherokee folk medicine, historically, a wash of the top portions would be used. So they do, that's just a couple examples of the many uses they have by different peoples in North America. I also don't understand where that internet meme came that they're not used in indigenous medicine, because they are, and they're very important. The only thing I ever used ghost pipe for was for pain, which I no longer use it for because it did not work for me. And I try not to give something to someone if I cannot get it to work for me. You know what I mean? Even though I might just have a different constitution, especially when it comes to pain, I really want to see it work in my own body before I confidently give it to someone who's hurting and say, here, take this. But I also want to caution against large doses of this plant because, once again, the dose of toxicity is unknown. There's never been a death from ghost pipe on the literature, and there's never been a poisoning case from ghost pipe, though, in the literature. So I feel like inherently in my feeling, which is not scientific, that it's probably okay in small doses, very infrequently.
So what do you use it for?
Nothing. Yeah. But I included it in the book because sometimes it can help certain people with pain. And sometimes it can help if someone is having a panic from taking too much drugs like LSD. I have used it for that once successfully out of 3 times in a 3-drop dose directly into the mouth. Especially if someone's stuck in a loop and they just can't stop getting in that scary spot and they're saying the same thing over and over again, that's usually where it's indicated. I already went through that. Goldenrod, I also said, is a great, oh, please.
For like extreme grief, if you're like hysterical in grief, maybe it's almost like having an LSD trip. If you're like, you know, having, yeah, kind of panic attack with grief moments.
This person just shared that it can be really helpful for grief, which can feel like an LSD trip because of going in and out of it. Is that accurate to what you just said? Yeah, roughly. I just want to make sure they can hear it on the recording. Yes, definitely have seen it used in grief formula as well. I think the biggest thing with ghost pipe that I want to leave you with is that, once again, I think it's one of those examples of herbs that we just have to get more curious about. And sometimes at the end of the day, working with herbs, as especially for me as like a settler, ancestred person on North American soil, is some herbs we just don't have to use them. And there's so many other options. It's not like, oh, I'm going to give that up to showboat that I'm like a good white person. It's like, no. There just might be something that's more effective, ecologically sustainable, and isn't a sacred plant. So at the end of the day, all of or nothing can be true in that statement. You know what I mean? And I just think it's a really good example of that. And I mentioned earlier, for old sores or slow to heal wounds, goldenrod is my go-to. And funny, it's so funny. I feel like our Solidago canadensis, the larger flowering goldenrod that we see a lot, another one that hybridizes that sometimes can be difficult to ID, is so abundant and such an incredible medicine. And sometimes we forget that the plants that are the most abundant are actually the best medicine. And I feel like goldenrod does it all. Like, it's just such an underutilized medicine, although I see more and more people reaching for it, and it just makes me smile because I love goldenrod. Even though it has a little bit of funny folklore, they say it's bad luck to bring it in the house. It's one of the mother die plants in English folklore. Make your mother die if you bring it in the house. I think it's because it there's a stink bug on my leg. I think it's because it causes fluff from the seeds if you bring it in the house, and then your mom is gonna get super mad at you. So there was some mom in the English countryside in like the 1600s that was like, "Child, if you bring that in the house one more time, I'm gonna die." Like absolutely freaking out because they don't want to sweep up the fluff. Queen Anne's lace is another one of the mother dye plants in English folklore. I don't know why that one doesn't make fluff, so I have no story for that one. Goldenrod is a really common aster family plant, and there's 1 to 200 species, and they have been introduced all over the world. They grow all over Europe now. They are native to North America. Solidago canadensis gives us a hint, canadensis, Canada, that it's native to the northerly parts of this turtle island. And they're considered invasive here, but once again, we made up a border. So I don't understand. To me, I'm like, it is changing its range as climate change moves our plant populations around. But saying that something that grows on the continent we're attached to is invasive is so confusing for my brain. I'm not an ecologist though, so someone probably has more to teach me on that front for sure. I'll end with a little bit about goldenrod, and then I will open up some space for questions. Solidago means to make whole. And originally this plant was largely used as a healer of broken bones and wounded flesh, and as a vulnerary. And of course, it's yellow like pee-pee, which helps you remember it's good for the pee-pee parts, for your kidneys and your bladder. I'm so sorry I had to do this. And it was used extensively in Southern American folk medicine in all communities for that purpose. And they learned largely from indigenous populations using it for that purpose as tea of the leaf and flower for kidney infections and kidney stones, the gravel. It's a warming, bitter, pungent herb. And it's also used as a wash and salve on the legs, especially for hard to heal or old wounds and sores in indigenous medicine. The root was also used as a remedy for burns, which is really interesting. And the tea was particularly used for fevers in Black communities in the South. I think a lot of us are on this train. Goldenrod is not what's making you allergic, it's ragweed, but they both bloom at the same time. And the coolest thing about it is that goldenrod is a remedy for ragweed allergy, and ragweed is a remedy for ragweed allergy, which I included ragweed in my book, which is one of the like hated plants that you can actually eat in small quantities, which is so fun. No, somebody out there's allergic to goldenrod, I'm sure. But in general, their pollen is so large, ants largely move it around and bugs move it around. It doesn't necessarily flow freely in the breeze like the tiny little bits of ragweed pollen. I love goldenrod honey. Drying the flowers and infusing them in honey is a beautiful way to take their medicine. They make a gorgeous oxymelon vinegar. I love to take 2 tablespoons of this in cool water for a urinary tract infection. First signs that have to pee feeling, I'll go ahead and take some of that and drink some clear water through after, and that'll usually knock it out if I catch it early enough. One of my favorite, easy to make, affordable home remedies. And it also is a diuretic, so it's going to help encourage you to urinate more and clear urine totally from the bladder, which is really helpful when you have a urinary tract infection. I won't tell you about spicebush. I'm going to make you read the book because I want to give you some time. But I included spicebush because I've never seen it included in an herbal except for, I believe, in Liz Neve's Northeastern Herbal. I think she included it in hers, which I love reading that one. It's so great. It goes well with Corey Pine Shane's Southeastern Herbs book as well. But spicebush is what I named my business after because I love that it is both a literal, just a powerful, sweet, fragrant medicine that has such a long history of cleaning the blood, which is a folk way of saying, just improving our metabolic processes. And to me represents that the beauty of the strange way that people communicated about health and that we still use today. Thank you so much for sitting here and listening to me talk about plants for an hour and talk about poop. And I would just say that I really hope that if you are already working with herbs or you already have an herbal practice, I hope this is a helpful reference, especially if you're saying, where does this plant come from? Who makes our medicine? That is what I hope this book leads you to. And I hope that you, when you write your herbal someday, that you improve upon and correct all my mistakes. So thank you all so much. Thank you so much, Liberty and Firestorm.
See if I have better luck with this mic now. That seems better. Okay, great. So if folks have questions or anything they'd like to share, I'm going to encourage y'all to come up if you're able to and use the microphone, which will make sure that folks who aren't here present with us, we've had over the course of the event about a dozen folks join in remotely. So we want to make sure that they're included. If you're not able to come to the microphone, then maybe you can raise a hand and we can do a little repeat. You've been great about that. So yeah, thanks so much. And then also just want to reiterate that we do have copies of this wonderful book available by the register. So make sure to grab one. And also by the register, we cleared out our garden beds here at Firestorm and harvested a ton of Rudbeckia seed. So if anybody would like a little bit of purple coneflower, or black-eyed Susan, please grab a bag of seeds on your way out.
I'm happy to repeat your question if you don't want to get up. Or comment if you just have something you want to share. Super happy to hear you.
So my great grandmother's from this area, like Macon County. My family goes way back. And when she died, there was a freezer full of pokeberries. And my entire family basically acted like she's crazy. But the more I look into it, the more I learn it's like a super common thing for people to use and eat the pokeberries whole because the toxins are mostly concentrated in the seeds. And unless you really, really work to chew those seeds, you're not going to get those. They're just going to pass through. And what I understand she would do, she would swallow the berries whole. And if she took it for rheumatism, and I've also heard about it being used as a lymph stimulator. And something else with the pain, people are so used to like taking Tylenol. Well, it'll work on the entire body. It just goes where it needs to. But like something with the plants is that it might be more, could it be that it's more niche, like how it'll work for some things and not for others, like you mentioned with the ghost pipe, not working for you, but how it would work for other people. So that's another question I had with that one. But I was wondering if like you knew more about like some of the local Appalachian specific uses for things like poke that are now considered toxic in just a couple generations.
That's a great question. I'm so sorry. I actually wrote a book called Mountain Magic, which I think Firestorm is one of the only places that carries it now, which is just about exactly what you're talking about. Oh, there's a copy right there. That's my only Appalachian book, also cited if you want to learn more. Yeah, pokeberries are really commonly used, swallowed whole, usually done also ritualistically with the number 9, starting with 1, then 2, then 3, going each day to 9, and then going back to 1. I know an older gentleman who makes a syrup with just the fruit with the seeds strained out and has taken it for like 20 years for rheumatism and arthritis. And yeah, it's true. The seeds are toxic, but the berry is not. That's one of my party tricks is to eat a pokeberry and spit the seeds out. And my friend who's from England eats yew berries or arils and spits the seeds out, which I would never do. And he's like, I can't believe you eat pokeberries. So it's all about what you're used to, right? But yeah, that, poke is very toxic. There are many deaths associated with it. It is one of the deadly plants we have to be careful of. However, the berries are not the poisonous part. There's never been a death from the berries in the United States. They believe 30 to 50 berries is a toxic dose, but no one's ever chewed them all up, I guess. But it's very commonly used as a lymph stimulator and for people with cysts, with growths on the body. And like, especially when you get just like those hot kind of non-pus containing benign cysts, that's when poke is often called for. Does anyone want to add anything to that for poke? Poke salad, of course, Lucretia says, which, eating 9 messes of poke in spring is said to be tonic against influenza. And we have to cook that through 3 changes of water. I did have a friend say, you can just do it through 2. I ate his poke. My mouth was on fire. So I don't think that was enough changes of boiling water for me, for my constitution. It was too much phytolaucin, the compound that is toxic in poke. Phytolacca americana. Another fun hint from the Latin names, helping me remember where things are from. Yeah, thanks for sharing that about your family, though. I always have a sadness that my family didn't use herbs. That's all stuff I've learned as an adult. So I'm glad that I have my friend relations as my family that teaches me about plants. Anyone else want to share anything? Otherwise, I'll let you go home. I know it's late. Please.
I see some recipes that like vinegar and wine are interchangeable. Is there ever a situation when you choose one over the other?
That's a really good question. So when would you choose in old recipes that say you could use either wine or vinegar? How would you know which one to choose? For me, I think of vinegar as the mineral extractor. So if I'm using really like nutritive herbs like dandelion, chickweed, cleavers, nettle, things that have big mineral molecules, the acid from the vinegar is going to be more powerful of a solvent than like the roughly 14% alcohol wine. So if you have something you're trying to make into like a more nutritive tonic medicine, I would do that. If you have something that's more warming, like I think nettle wine would taste kind of yucky, but cardamom wine would taste really good. Cardamom is one of the plants I included in my book because I'm obsessed with cardamom tinctures for digestive issues. And that would be a nice wine as well. But yeah, I think it's about your taste too. Like for you as a creative creator, what do you think would taste better? And wine may not keep certain herbs fresh long without being in the fridge because it doesn't have the alcohol content to preserve it. It's a great question. Yeah. Oh, please.
Do you include like craft techniques or traditions in this book, or is it mostly just like medicinal, like in terms of like pokeberry, maybe even dye, like
I didn't know, but my friend Jeremy Bekele is publishing a magical inks book coming out very soon. Look out for that one with tons of ink making recipes. With making ink. Oh yeah, it's so fun. Right now you can make walnut ink, you can make pokeberry ink. It's so much fun. Japan has beautiful pokeberry. They have Phytolacca japonica. They have their own version of poke and they make a traditional dye there from it as well. Since we used to be connected to Asia, we have a lot of shared plant practices, which is really beautiful here in Appalachia. I'll shut her down. Thank you so much. Oh my God. Oh, I'm just stoked that people care about plants. Appreciate you so much. Y'all have a good night.